Alright guys, so we're going to work together to find rate and unit rate through these different word problems. Please make sure you have the notes sitting in front of you. The first question should look like mine. It's right below where we just did the jumping jack challenge. So, number 1 says, the Townsend family is going camping in North Carolina, which is 288 miles from their house. They would like to reach the campground in 6 hours so they can set up their campsite. What should their average speed be in miles per hour? So, remember, we just talked about a unit rate is a ratio whose denominator is 1. So that's our final goal, is to figure out how far they go in 1 hour. To do that, we first need to figure out the rate that's in this problem. So the rate of travel was 288 miles, which is how far it is from their house to North Carolina, and they want to reach it in 6 hours. So that's our starting rate. So to change a rate into a unit rate, we have to set up a proportion. So to start, we write our rate that we have, 288 miles, 6 hours. Our second step is to divide both the numerator and the denominator by what our denominator is. So in this case, we're dividing by 6. See, I already wrote it for you, because that's what our denominator is. So we need to do 6 divided by 6, which will get us 1 hour. And then we need to do 288 divided by 6 to get our new numerator. So let's do this division. 6 can't go into 2, put a 0. 6 goes into 28 4 whole times. 4 times 6 is 24, so we'll subtract. Then we bring down our 8, and 6 goes into 48, 8 whole times, because 8 times 6 is 48. So our new numerator is 48 miles. So we just found our unit rate, and what that tells us is they can go 48 miles per hour. And that's our final answer. Alright, number 2 says, Miss Smith traveled 325 miles in 5 hours. So right there, that is the rate we have to start with. We need to figure out how far does she travel in 1 hour. So we need to find her unit rate. So we start by setting up our rate, 325 miles over 5 hours. Alright, our next step, we need to figure out our unit rate. To do this, we need to divide both our numerator and our denominator by what our denominator is. So we're dividing by 5 here, on the top and on the bottom. So 5 divided by 5 will get us our 1 hour, which is what we need. Remember, your denominator needs to be 1 for it to be a unit rate. And then we have to do the top, so 325 divided by 5. 5 can't go into 3, put a 0. 5 goes into 32, 6 whole times, because 6 times 5 is 30, and we're left with 2. Bring down our 5. 5 goes into 25, 5 whole times. 5 times 5 is 25, and we're done. So our new numerator is 65 miles. So what that tells us is she can travel 65 miles in 1 hour. And that would be our final answer. There's our unit rate. So make sure when you're setting these up, in the very beginning, you want to make sure that time is a denominator. So in both the first 2 questions, we put our hours as our denominator. Okay, so make sure you remember your time should go in the denominator place. That'll be helpful when you start doing these problems on your own and you are setting up your proportions. Go ahead and try number 3 by yourself and then check back with the video and see how you did. So number 3 says, while exercising, Miss Cattell's heart rate beats 675 times in 5 minutes. How many times does it beat per minute? So our starting rate is 675 beats. And then our denominator should be our time, which it happens over 5 minutes. It's also important to point out that you should always have your units here. Make sure you have beats and minutes before you go any further. After this, you need it to find our unit rate, so we should be dividing by our denominator. So our denominator here is 5. So divide by 5 in the numerator, divide by 5 in the denominator. When you do this, 5 divided by 5 gets you 1 minute. And 675 divided by 5. 5 goes into 6 one time. 1 times 5 is 5. Bring down our 7. 5 goes into 17 3 times. 3 times 5 is 15. You're left with 2. Bring down your 5. 5 goes into 25 5 whole times perfectly. And we're done. So your new numerator should be 135 beats. So the answer to this question, how many times does it beat per minute? Miss Cattell's heart rate beats 135 beats per minute, or in 1 minute. Either way is fine. Alright, so number 4 says, to make 4 large pizzas, Miss McCall needs 14 cups of mozzarella cheese. How much cheese does she need for 1 large pizza? So in this case, they don't ask us, or they don't tell us time. So when we are setting this up, we have to pay attention to what we need to get 1 of. In this case, we need to figure out how much cheese we need for 1 pizza. And remember, that matches up because we need to find our unit rate, which means our denominator needs to be 1. So for this setup, we need to put our cups of cheese, 14 cups, as the numerator, and 4 pizzas as the denominator. That way, when we divide by our denominator, divided by 4, divided by 4, we get 1 pizza as our denominator. 4 divided by 4. Okay? And now we can do our division of our numerator. 14 divided by 4. So 4 can't go into 1, put a 0. 4 goes into 14 3 whole times, because 3 times 4 is 12. And our remainder is 2. So our whole number is 3. Our numerator is our remainder, so 2, and your denominator stays the same, 4ths. 3 and 2/4 can be simplified to 3 1/2, which is our final answer. We need 3 1/2 cups per pizza. So 3 1/2 cups of cheese per pizza. Done. Go ahead and try number 5 on your own, so pause the video and then check back so you can check your work. Alright, so hopefully you already did the problem, so let's work it out together to check your answer. Should have had 165 words as your numerator, 3 minutes as your denominator, because it's time. Remember, time always needs to be denominator. Then divide both by your denominator, which is 3 here. And when you divide 3 divided by 3, you're left with 1 minute on the denominator. And your numerator should be 165 divided by 3. And you should have gotten 55 words per minute. 55 words when you did that division. So final answer, 55 words in 1 minute or per minute. Either one is okay. All right, so before we move on to the next 2 questions, we wanted to refresh our memory on rounding very quickly. So when you're rounding money, you need to be rounding to the 100th place. Okay, so remember place value, you have your decimal, you have tenths, then you have hundredths. Okay? So go ahead and practice these 5 questions very quickly, just to practice rounding before we get to the next question. So pause the video and then check back to check your answers. All right, so here are the correct answers. Please check yours, and then we will move on. So for these last 2 questions, we are talking about money. And just like before, when I said time was a denominator, you need to remember that money will be a numerator. That'll help you when you set up these proportions. Money goes in the numerator position. So for this question, number 6, Courtney earned $52 babysitting her nephew and niece for 8 hours. How much did she earn per hour? So money is my numerator. $52 goes on the top over 8 hours. So this was a twofer. So money was in the numerator, time was in the denominator. So that should have been an easy one to set up. Then we divide by our denominator, which is 8 here. So we have 1 hour on the bottom, 8 divided by 8. And now we need to divide our numerator. So 52 divided by 8. So 8 can't go into 5, put a 0. 8 goes into 52 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48. Borrow, and we're left with 4. Now, since this is money, we're dealing with decimals, so we're going to put a decimal here and add a 0 and bring that down. Don't forget to shoot your decimal through the roof, so a decimal is there as well. Now 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is perfectly 40. So when we're writing our answer, 6.5, but we're talking money, so we want to make it $6.50. So Courtney earned $6.50 per hour while she was babysitting. Go ahead and try number 7 by yourself, and then check back with the video to see how you did. Alright, so hopefully you already did this by yourself, so let's check your answer. When you set up your first, the rate, you should have done $7.46 as your numerator, 4 Snickers as your denominator, and then you needed to divide by your denominator, which is 4, so divided by 4, divided by 4. That would give you 1 Snicker on the bottom, and then when you divide it, $7.46 divided by 4. 4 goes into 7 1 time. Bring down your other 4. 4 goes into 34 8 times. Bring down your 6. 4 goes into 26 6 times. And add a 0. Bring it all the way down. 4 goes into 25 times. Perfectly. Don't forget to shoot your decimal through the roof. So you get 1 and 865 thousandths, but we're talking money, so you know we need to round the 6. 5 tells me to round the 6 up to 1 and 87 hundredths. So for 1 Snickers, it's should be $1.86 as your final answer.